Somewhere in the deep architecture of spacetime, the laws that have held reality intact for 4 billion years just experienced a violent perturbation. On February 13, 2026, at precisely 8 o'clock UTC, data streams from NASA's Deep Space Network transmitted the first signal of what would become the most significant astrophysical event in human history, an object designated 3I Atlas, a city-sized interstellar entity that had been methodically tracked approaching Earth from the solar wind simply ceased to exist. Not gradually, not over hours, instantaneously. One moment, the object registered at stable coordinates 1.5 million kilometers in front of Earth, positioned near the L1 Lagrange point, the gravitational equilibrium zone between our planet and the Sun. The next moment, the telemetry data went blank. The radar signature vanished. The optical tracking systems reported null returns. For the next 5 hours and 42 minutes, 3I Atlas effectively erased itself from conventional detection matrices. And then, at 13 hours and 56 minutes UTC, an automated survey telescope in Chile, part of the global astronomical network designed to warn civilization of planetary threats, flagged an anomalous contact, not in front of Earth, behind Earth, deep within the electromagnetic shadow of our planet's magnetotail, positioned 800,000 kilometers within the region known as the anti-solar point. The object had moved across 2 million kilometers of space without traversing the space in between. Theoretical models suggest this represents the first documented macroscopic quantum event ever recorded. Data simulations indicate that conventional physics simply cannot explain what the instruments captured that day. To understand the magnitude of this event, we must first examine the physics of what should have happened if this object had obeyed classical mechanics. Einstein's relativity tells us that nothing can exceed the speed of light. Yet, if 3I Atlas had traveled in a straight line from its initial position to its final position in the recorded time frame, it would have needed to maintain a velocity exceeding 90 kilometers per second throughout the entire journey. That velocity alone approaches relativistic speeds, but relativistic motion generates thermal signatures. Relativistic acceleration through a solar medium creates detectable electromagnetic disturbances. The Parker Solar Probe, currently orbiting the Sun and monitoring the solar wind, detected nothing. SOHO, the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, positioned between Earth and the Sun to monitor coronal mass ejections, recorded no passage of a massive object. The space between point A and point B was completely empty. No heat signature, no radiation burst, no sonic boom in the plasma, just emptiness. And yet the object arrived at its destination with absolute precision. Researchers at the University of Strasbourg in France, operating extremely sensitive gravimeters designed to measure minute fluctuations in local gravitational fields, detected something extraordinary. Exactly at the moment when Chilean astronomers spotted the object behind Earth, the gravimeters registered a gravitational spike, not a sustained pulse, a snap, a momentary disturbance lasting 0.0104 seconds, exactly the duration expected if a massive object had suddenly punched a hole through the local space-time continuum. This gravitational signature matches theoretical predictions generated by the Alcubierre warp drive metric, an equation proposed decades ago that describes how a sufficiently advanced civilization might manipulate the geometry of space-time itself to achieve faster-than-light travel without violating relativity. The Alcubierre metric works through a principle that can be visualized simply. Imagine space as a sheet of paper. Under normal conditions, an object must crawl across the surface, which requires traversing every point of distance and takes proportional time. But if you can manipulate the metric, if you can fold that paper so that point A and point B become adjacent, you can traverse the distance instantaneously. When the paper unfolds, the object has traveled an enormous distance while locally only moving a few centimeters. This requires something called exotic matter, a hypothetical substance with negative energy density. It shouldn't exist naturally in a comet, yet the data suggest that 3I Atlas possesses it. Theoretical models propose that if a Type 2 or Type 3 civilization has achieved mastery over negative energy structures, they could indeed manipulate the spacetime metric on such a grand scale. The telemetry is consistent with exactly that scenario. String theory frameworks suggest that such civilizations would possess understanding of the 11 dimensions of spacetime that remain hidden from our direct observation. They would navigate through dimensional shortcuts, what physicists call wormholes or Einstein-Rosen bridges. The mathematics describing such phenomena has existed in peer-reviewed literature for decades. We simply lacked the observational evidence until now. A Type 3 civilization, by the Kardashev scale, would be capable of harnessing the energy output of an entire galactic supercluster, possessing mastery over stellar scale engineering. Such a civilization would regard the manipulation of local spacetime geometry as routine technology, no more remarkable than we might regard radio transmission. The gravitational snap recorded by French gravimeters represents the first direct instrumental evidence that such technological manipulation may exist within our observable universe. The implications reshape our understanding of technological progression, energy sources, and the fundamental nature of physical reality itself. Once positioned behind Earth, 3I Atlas entered a region of space with unique properties. The magnetotail is the portion of Earth's magnetic field that stretches away from the Sun like a comet's tail, blown backward by the solar wind. Inside this region, the magnetic field is highly structured and relatively predictable. The odds of a randomly moving object accidentally landing in such a precise location, especially the exact apex of the magnetotail, are calculated at roughly 1 in 4.7 billion. This is not coincidence. This is insertion, not trajectory. The object then exhibited behavior that confirmed intentional positioning. Infrared scans from the James Webb Space Telescope revealed a thermal temperature of minus 230 degrees Celsius. This is approximately 50 degrees above absolute zero. This is physically impossible for a natural object positioned within the solar system. Even in Earth's shadow, solar radiation reflects off interplanetary dust and creates ambient heating. A natural cometary object composed of ice and rock should experience background warming. Yet 3I Atlas maintained an artificially low temperature. This thermal signature is consistent with an object actively absorbing heat, functioning as a thermodynamic heatsink. High-performance quantum computers and superconducting magnets require cryogenic cooling at precisely these temperatures. The infrared profile matches a massive machine designed for extreme computational processing, not a dirty snowball from the outer solar system. Within hours of assuming its position in the magnetotail, the object altered its rotational characteristics. Data from the previous weeks showed 3I Atlas rotating once every 8 hours, a stable spin consistent with natural cometary objects. But at 23 hours UTC on February 13th, the rotation began decelerating. In just 20 minutes, the angular momentum of a 3 billion-ton object slowed from one rotation every 8 hours to complete stillness. Zero angular velocity. To achieve this deceleration would require an enormous braking force applied simultaneously across the entire mass. The energy required would be equivalent to multiple nuclear detonations, yet no exhaust plumes were detected, no thrusters fired, no chemical propulsion signatures appeared in any of the thermal imaging systems. The object simply decided to stop rotating. It is now tidally locked on Earth with a precision of 0.002 degrees, maintaining perfect alignment like a satellite in geostationary orbit, yet without any visible propulsion system maintaining that position. This level of control suggests gravitational manipulation at scales previously thought theoretical. The radar images returned by Earth-based radar arrays revealed details that fundamentally transformed the analysis. The surface of 3I Atlas displayed geometric regularity, straight lines, right angles, flat reflective surfaces arranged with perfect symmetry. In nature, celestial objects form through accretion, where gravity pulls dust and rock into spherical or elongated shapes, following the dictates of gravitational potential energy minimization. Nature builds in fractals, in curves, in self-similar patterns. Intelligence builds in right angles and flat planes optimized for specific functions. The front face of 3I Atlas showed a flat, perfectly reflective surface oriented perpendicular to Earth. The geometry is consistent with a directed antenna or receiver, something designed to focus electromagnetic energy or collect signals from a specific direction. This antenna-like structure suddenly became active. Theoretical models suggest it transitioned from passive to active configuration, beginning transmission and reception protocols. The surface reflectivity measurements indicate a composition unlike anything cataloged in natural astrophysical objects. Spectroscopic analysis shows absorption patterns consistent with metamaterials, artificially engineered substances designed to manipulate electromagnetic waves in ways impossible for natural minerals. What happened next shifted the nature of the event from astrophysical anomaly to potential existential crisis. At 18 hours and 42 minutes UTC on February 13th, the Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia, one of the most sensitive radio astronomy facilities on Earth, detected an unprecedented signal spike. This wasn't the random chaotic electromagnetic hiss of solar wind. This wasn't background cosmic radiation. This was a coherent, structured, high-bandwidth data stream. And here is where the narrative becomes exponentially more significant. The signal was not being broadcast by 3I Atlas. The signal was being transmitted to 3I Atlas, and it was originating from Earth. The signal source has been traced to a specific geographic coordinate within the South Atlantic anomaly, a region where Earth's magnetic field is measurably weaker than elsewhere on the planet. In this zone, Earth's protective magnetosphere is attenuated, allowing charged particles from the solar wind to penetrate closer to the atmosphere than normal. The carrier wave of the transmission was modulated at 1,420 MHz, a frequency of profound significance in astrophysics. The 1,420 MHz hydrogen line is the natural frequency at which hydrogen atoms emit radiation as electrons transition between energy states. This frequency has been designated across scientific literature as the universal channel for first contact protocols, the frequency that an advanced civilization would theoretically monitor when seeking to establish communication with newly detected intelligent life. This is not arbitrary. This is the frequency specifically selected in hypothetical first contact scenarios. Someone on Earth is actively communicating with this entity, and the authorization to do so did not originate from any known governmental or international space agency. Within minutes of detecting this transmission, 3I Atlas responded. The response took a form completely unprecedented in recorded observation. The object emitted a burst of gravitational waves, ripples in space-time itself that propagate through the universe at light speed. Gravitational waves should only exist under extreme cosmic violence, under conditions like two black holes colliding or two neutron stars merging, events of unimaginable energy density. A natural comet cannot generate gravitational waves, yet 3I Atlas produced them. Moreover, these gravitational waves were modulated. They carried information encoded in their waveform. When NASA's LIGO detectors, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, processed the signal through their decryption algorithms, the pattern that emerged was remarkable. The gravitational ripples were vibrating at 7.83 Hz, the exact frequency of the Schumann resonance, the natural electromagnetic frequency of Earth's magnetic field, the fundamental pulse of our planet's magnetosphere. 3I Atlas had synchronized its outbound signal with Earth's own biorhythmic frequency. This is a direct signal exchange, a handshake between an entity that can manipulate space-time and a terrestrial source that possesses the technology to communicate across gravitational waves. The implications of this exchange cannot be overstated. The entity has demonstrated not only technological superiority but also understanding of human neurology and consciousness. The Schumann resonance frequencies, ranging from approximately 7 to 8 Hz, are known to influence human brainwave patterns, particularly theta and alpha wave rhythms associated with meditation, relaxation, and cognitive processing. This is not accidental targeting. This is deliberate resonance with biological systems. The entity has somehow detected, studied, and synchronized with the fundamental frequency of human consciousness itself. This suggests observations spanning months or years, detailed study of terrestrial electromagnetic signatures, and precise knowledge of human neurobiology. A natural object cannot possess such knowledge. This confirms intentional, intelligent communication. Immediately following this exchange, authorities initiated an unprecedented information blackout. The live public data feeds from the Green Bank telescope were abruptly cut. The screens went dark. Officials cited routine maintenance, but the timing is unmistakable. You do not remove the world's most critical radio listening device from operational status for routine procedures while an interstellar entity is actively establishing contact protocols. The data was cut because what they saw in the transmission patterns alarmed the scientific community sufficiently to warrant immediate information containment. As of June 19, 2026, the current date, the object remains positioned within Earth's magnetotail, maintaining its steady observation posture. The signal from the South Atlantic anomaly continues intermittently. The gravitational pulses persist. The connection remains open. The facts that can be definitively established from documented observations are clear. The object moved from Earth's sunlit side to its night side in under 6 hours, violating every classical law of orbital mechanics and requiring technology consistent with space-time metric manipulation. It positioned itself in the magnetotail, the single location where it could monitor Earth while remaining shielded from solar interference. It assumed a tidally locked orientation with a geometric antenna-like surface directed toward our world. It exchanged coherent signals with a terrestrial source using the hydrogen line frequency. It responded with gravitational waves encoded at Earth's native biorhythmic frequency. And finally, terrestrial authorities initiated information suppression. These are not speculative claims. These are documented observations captured by multiple independent instruments across multiple agencies. The civilization that orchestrated this arrival has demonstrated technological capabilities that place them well beyond Type 2 on the Kardashev scale. A Type 2 civilization harnesses the entire energy output of a star. A Type 3 civilization harnesses the entire energy output of a galaxy. The ability to manipulate space-time geometry to suppress angular momentum of 3 billion-ton objects without visible thrusters and to generate gravitational waves at will suggests we are observing technology from a civilization that has transcended Type 2 classification. They possess what theoretical physicists have described as godlike capabilities over the fundamental laws of physics itself. They can reshape the geometry of reality at will. The only remaining question is the most disturbing one. Why the shadow? Why position itself in darkness? If this were a diplomatic mission, a peaceful contact scenario, the entity would announce itself in full visibility. It would arrive where all civilization could witness the encounter. But 3I Atlas chose the darkness. It chose the exact location where the sun cannot reach it, where solar radiation cannot interfere with its operations, where it can observe without being obviously observed. Physics tells us the magnetotail is a shield. Strategy tells us it is a blind spot. The fundamental question now becomes not what is 3I Atlas, but what is it preparing to do? Is this a probe, in which case the scanning phase is complete? Is this a vessel, in which case it has reached its destination? The signal from the South Atlantic anomaly remains active. The gravitational pulses continue modulating at 7.83 Hz. The connection remains open. Every passing hour brings this civilization closer to the next phase of whatever intelligence orchestrated this arrival possesses. The Hubble Space Telescope has been retasked to stare exclusively into the dark patch behind Earth, watching for signs of the next movement. Whatever 3I Atlas is preparing for next, humanity is about to discover. The positioning within the magnetotail suggests three possible scenarios under current theoretical frameworks. First, the entity could be conducting deep surveillance of terrestrial communications, military installations, and technological infrastructure. The magnetotail provides perfect electromagnetic shielding while allowing continuous observation of Earth's night side, where most human population centers and technological concentrations exist. Second, the entity could be preparing for resource acquisition, studying Earth's biosphere, water systems, mineral compositions, and atmospheric chemistry for potential exploitation or scientific documentation. Third, and most concerning, the entity could be establishing a beacon or communication relay station, positioning itself to transmit signals deeper into space-time, summoning additional entities, or establishing a permanent outpost within our solar system. The forensic analysis of all available data suggests the third scenario most likely matches observed patterns. The deliberate positioning, the geometric surface regularity, the cryogenic thermal maintenance, and the synchronized communication protocols all point toward infrastructure establishment rather than reconnaissance completion. This is not a visiting delegation. This is construction of a permanent presence.